Exclusive.
Bush Summit. Fossil fuel approach foolhardy, says Gina Rinehart.
Yes, a scoop on Gina Rinehart calling for Australia not to abandon fossil fuels. Just 2 days after 1,500 scientists debated whether Antarctica is reaching a tipping point because the ice is melting so fast. And why was Rinehart making news in The Australian last week and all the News Corp papers, and indeed on Sky?
Hello, dear Pilbarites. And for me, it's especially lovely to see our ladies in pink. Thank you for coming.
Yes, Gina was the star attraction in the News Corp Bush Summit, telling the faithful in Port Hedland on Friday,
You simply have to invest in more mines each year, each decade, if you want to retain revenue streams and living standards. Isn't it time for reality?
But News Corp didn't just bring us Rinehart's sermon from the Pilbara, because that News Corp Bush Summit travelled right around the country, with a shindig in each state for the city tabloids to swoon over. And Dr Rinehart, as she is now known, was the star act, no doubt because she paid for it, or most of it, with the summit sponsored by Hancock Prospecting and each day presented by one of Rinehart's brands. The mining magnate kicking off on day one with a plan to boost our defence capabilities.
Make military training compulsory for all biological men in the Defence Department, under, say, 53.
And getting a big tick in the News Corp tabloids.
Drill, baby, drill.
Billionaire's call to action to boost Australia's defence systems.
Also proposing an Israeli-like Iron Dome missile shield to protect Australia. Yes, really. And that was the theme all week. Gina's National Blueprint, funded by the miracle of mining. With Monday's topic being the classroom, which Gina says is full of woke propaganda.
Can you believe that in the entire high school economics and business curriculum, mining, coal and iron ore do not receive even a single mention?
Which was broadcast live on Sky, then echoed by News Corp like this.
Teach the kids mining.
Billionaire Gina Rinehart unleashes on woke Australia at Bush Summit.
In all, Rinehart gave 5 speeches over 8 days, calling for cuts in taxes, blaming migrants for worker shortages, crime, the housing crisis and lengthy hospital wait times, and slamming renewables while demanding more gas in our energy mix. And all her pitches went out in full on Sky News, uncut, giving her about 1 hour and a half of unchallenged airtime, with The Australian rounding off the week with an editorial highlighting her wisdom and ideas for reform. So, did Gina get this unfettered airtime and glowing editorial in return for her sponsorship? And are readers of the News Corp tabloids remotely interested in this barrage of self-serving ideas? We asked News Corp how much Gina Rinehart paid and whether all these column inches were part of the sponsorship deal. We did not get a response. We also asked Rinehart the same questions, but did not hear back. But one former executive told us corporate sponsors of the Bush Summit would likely be paying at least $100,000 and some editorial coverage would be expected in exchange. So it's a win-win for everyone, except the readers.
It's all open. How are you? That's good.
Hello, mate.
Oh, hello, guys.
Following us around? What are you doing?
No, I'm an Uber driver
You're
now.
Ubering, that's right.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And that was 2GB's Ben Fordham behind the wheel last year, showing off his amazing new side hustle and keen to tell his listeners all about it.
A little bit of personal news. I kicked a goal on Friday because I'm now an Uber driver.
Yes, really. And bragging a couple of days later about picking up his first passenger.
Wen was her name. Yeah, lovely lady. I picked her up not far from 2GB and dropped her to work, and she gave me 5 stars and switched. She gave me a $3 tip.
Yep, every dollar counts in a cost of living crisis, even when you're Sydney's #1 breakfast host, earning a reported $1.5 million a year. So, was Fordham really needing an extra buck from the gig economy? Of course he wasn't. And last week, more than 12 months on, came the news that everyone should have spotted at the time.
2GB's Ben Fordham breached radio rules by failing to disclose he had a paid deal with a brand he spoke about favourably on air.
With the media watchdog, the ACMA, finding that
A commercial agreement in place between Uber and the program host at the time of the broadcast was not disclosed on air.
yes, Uber was paying Fordham to spruik the joys of the rideshare company. And we bet he was getting paid far more than a $3 tip to do so. With the radio ruse kicking off last July and featuring a cameo appearance from Home and Away star Kate Ritchie.
I'm an Uber driver and I'm doing my first, this is Wen, my first customer. Hi, Wen.
Clearly, Wen wanted no part of this stitch-up. But Fordham was chuffed, reporting back to his listeners.
I'm very, very proud of myself.
And explaining that his genius idea sprung from Uber, blaming surge pricing on a lack of drivers and tough economic times.
I said, righto, I'm going to do a side hustle. I'm going to become an Uber driver. And once I say I'm going to do something, you've got to follow through.
And just like that, 3 days later, Fordham was telling finance commentator Peter Switzer how wonderfully easy it all was.
It's so good, you just switch it on and think, all right, well, I've got an hour to kill here. I may as well make a bit of money.
And if that wasn't ridiculous enough, gullible news sites then regurgitated Ben's side hustle as real news, without any of them questioning whether the Uber gimmick was a paid stunt. And that was clearly a problem, with Fordham fessing up the next day and saying,
Uber are a partner of ours here at 2GB. They're advertising with us at 2GB. They're also hiring me to do a few other things for them, hosting some events, and also, I think at some stage I'm also going to be in one of the ads.
Well, surprise, surprise. But unfortunately, it was too late to stop ACMA finding that Fordham was in breach of the Broadcasting Services Act for initially failing to disclose the deal. The only real puzzle is why it took them a year to figure that out. But 2GB's Breakfast Star wasn't the only radio host to be pinged by the media watchdog last week for not telling listeners they were being paid to flog stuff. Here is 3AW's Jacqui Felgate talking up her slick BMW.
They are so quick off the mark. Like, ours is faster than our other car. Like, they've got so much power in terms of speed from a standing start. They're super quick.
And did Felgate have a commercial deal with the luxury car maker? You bet she did, as you can see from her Instagram account. With ACMA's Karina Chapman saying of Fordham and Felgate,
These kinds of commercial disclosure breaches have the potential to erode the public's trust in current affairs programming. Listeners deserve to know what commercial agreements are in place.
a point we have made time and time again. So, will things now change at 2GB? We doubt it. 3 years ago, Alan Jones breached disclosure rules by failing to reveal a sponsorship deal with Star Casino. And what was the punishment for that? Training for 2GB staff. And what's the punishment for the latest breach of the radio rules? More training for 2GB staff. The only difference being that 9 Radio, which owns 2GB and 3AW, now has to
commission an external audit of the processes it has in place to comply with the rules.
Big deal. No fines, no warnings, no time in the sin bin, no loss of licence. Just a slap with a wet lettuce. And as we've asked many times before, what is the point of a regulator if nothing happens when you break the rules? But at least 9 is hoping to do better, saying in a statement,
9 Radio takes its obligations under the disclosure standard very seriously and has increased training, updated employment contracts and conducts checks more frequently to ensure compliance.
yeah, right. We'll see if that makes any difference. But now, to one of the wonders of the natural world, which may not be so wonderful in future.
Great Barrier Reef on one-way path to decay thanks to climate change with no end in sight, report says.
Yes, more warnings about the future of Australia's biggest tourist attraction, with the latest Outlook report from the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority getting coverage across the media and prompting reef scientist Irv Goldberg to lament in the conversation.
Humanity is failing. Official report warns our chance to save the Great Barrier Reef is fast closing.
So, what did the News Corp papers have to say about it all? Not much. There was nothing in its big city tabloids in Sydney, Melbourne and Adelaide. Only tiny stories in the Courier Mail, Cairns Post and Gold Coast Bulletin, despite the reef being so vital to Queensland tourism, and nothing at all in the Australian. So, do the folks at News Corp not care that our reef is in danger? Well, not exactly, but they prefer not to believe it, because that would mean doing more about global warming. With ABC's Nate Byrne asking Melbourne University climate scientist Dr. Lyndon Ashcroft, as heat records are smashed around the world.
What's causing all of this?
Well, you can probably talk to the meteorology.
Yes.
I'm going to say climate change. 138 countries, over 70% of countries have had their hottest temperature on record over the past 12 months. And these stats just can't happen without the impact of climate change.
And as we know, the oceans are also warming at an alarming rate, with even News Corp noting 4 weeks ago that sea temperatures on the reef are now at 400-year highs. So, cause for alarm in that? Not in the Australian, because 4 days after that revelation, we were being told not to worry.
The Great Barrier Reef is in rude health, but why let facts get in the way?
And back in June, The Australian ran a similarly upbeat report from its environment editor Graham Lloyd, proclaiming
Resilient reef fights back.
And the common factor in those two stories? Rebel scientist Peter Ridd played a starring role in each, telling readers that coral cover on the reef is at record levels, the best in 35 years, and it's showing an amazing ability to recover. And naturally, Ridd's reassuring message was welcomed on Sky After Dark, where he repeated his regular claim that scientific institutions have got it completely wrong.
Actually, most people don't even know that the reef is in such good state because of the media.
Peter Ridd, in case you don't know, is a one-man campaigner against scientific consensus, at least when it comes to the reef and climate change, proclaiming the reef's amazing resilience on his Reef Rebels YouTube channel, as well as in articles and videos for the IPA, and back in the day on a tour of North Queensland. And with his frequent appearances on Sky News, Ridd also provides ammunition for attacks like this from Chris Kenny.
I think the reef has become like polar bears. The climate alarmists have chosen it as their instrument of fear and doom, and therefore it creates a completely wrong impression.
Ridd's training is in physics, not marine biology, and as a reef expert, he is an outlier. When we asked Professor Irv Goldberg of Queensland University if any coral scientists believe the reef is fine, he told us
very few. Peter Ridd's conclusion that the Great Barrier Reef is not currently in danger is not based on evidence.
And eminent coral expert Professor Terry Hughes added,
I have never met a single qualified reef scientist who accepts any of the climate or reef propaganda emanating from the Murdoch press or the IPA.
And backing that up, an expert panel led by former Chief Scientist Ian Chubb warned in 2019 that Ridd was misrepresenting reef science. So, not much of a report card. But Ridd does have a case that needs to be answered. As the latest Reef Outlook makes clear, coral cover on the reef was at record levels on some reefs last year, despite dire warnings and repeated mass bleachings. So, how do the concerned reef scientists explain that? Professor Hughes told us
higher than average coral cover in 2023 was due to the recovery of fast-growing, short-lived branching and table corals that are also very heat sensitive. Millions of them are now dead.
And why are they dead? Thanks to another severe mass bleaching last summer that is believed to have caused extensive but as yet unquantified damage. And Herb Goldberg warns the future can only get worse, telling us
mass coral bleaching and mortality have been growing in frequency and intensity. More and more we have lost larger and larger amounts of coral from places like the Great Barrier Reef, but coral in general. Many scientists say that we are starting to experience mass coral bleaching and mortality annually as sea temperatures keep moving upward.
The Australian Institute of Marine Science, which measures coral cover on the reef, agrees and adds that full recovery from bleaching can take decades. So, how long can our natural wonder keep bouncing back? The Institute admits, frankly,
we don't know. It's the million-dollar question. But we suspect that the resilience of the reef has limits, which will be severely tested moving forward under a warming climate. Detailed predictions about the future are difficult because what the reef is experiencing now is unprecedented in our 38 years of monitoring.
We put a similar question about the reef's resilience to Peter Ridd, who told us confidently,
it is almost certain that a warming climate will be beneficial to the corals of the Great Barrier Reef, far more likely than a negative impact. Corals grow faster in hot water. In addition, corals have an almost unique ability to deal with changing climate.
And he added,
I wish that the media would realise that the real bad news is that our Great Barrier Reef science institutions have become untrustworthy. That is what the record amounts of coral on the Great Barrier Reef have proven.
And who is right? Well, we hope it's Peter Ridd. But look at it this way. 2,500 reef scientists from all around the world say the Great Barrier Reef is facing mortal threat from climate change. Peter Ridd says it's not. And who does the Australian and Sky After Dark prefer to showcase? The one who tells us it'll all be okay and that our greatest natural wonder is fine. That's all from us for tonight. You can read full statements about the health of the Great Barrier Reef on our website, including a detailed response from the Australian Institute of Marine Science, the Reef Authority and Peter Ridd. You can also read a statement from 9 Radio. Don't forget Media Bites on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. But for now, until next week, goodbye.